So, what if I told you that the playbook for almost all successful modern advertising, I'm talking everything from your Google ads to the biggest influencer campaigns, was actually written over 100 years ago? It sounds kind of crazy, right? Well, today we're diving into Claude Hopkins' masterpiece, a book called Scientific Advertising. This is the book that took marketing from a total crapshoot into a predictable science.
To really get how huge this was, you've got to picture the world that Hopkins was operating in. He put it perfectly himself. He said advertising back then was like sailing a ship with no map, no compass, nothing. Businesses were just constantly wrecking themselves on the same hidden rocks, over and over, because nobody was keeping track of why they failed. It was pure, high-stakes guesswork, and a lot of people lost their shirts.
But then, into all that chaos, steps Claude Hopkins. And he had this belief that advertising just didn't have to be a gamble. He brought in a really radical idea for the time. What if advertising could be a science? And look, he wasn't talking about some vague theory. He meant a real system built on solid principles and, this is the key part, traced results. The whole goal was to turn this incredibly risky thing into one of the safest business ventures you could possibly make.
Okay, so how did he actually pull this off? Well, it all starts with his first, most fundamental principle. An ad has one job, and that job is to sell stuff. That's it. He had a great name for it, salesmanship in print. And that core idea leads to this, just a beautifully simple test for any ad you ever create. You can forget about industry awards, you can forget about being clever, you can even forget what the CEO thinks looks nice. The only question that actually matters is this one right here. Would this help a real live salesman sell the goods? If the answer to that is no, then the ad is a failure. Period.
And this comparison, it just gets right to the heart of the whole problem, doesn't it? You see so many ads where the writers are just trying to get applause. They want to be clever, they want to be literary. But think about a good salesman. Are they an entertainer? No. They're plain, they're sincere, and they are laser-focused on the customer's needs. Any ad writer who forgets that they are first and foremost a salesperson, well, they're pretty much doomed from the start.
Okay, so if advertising is just salesmanship, where does the science part come in? That brings us right to Hopkins' second big idea. The method is the science. This is all about taking the guesswork, the "I think this will work," completely out of the equation.
You know, this is where Hopkins was just so far ahead of his time. He basically invented A/B testing 100 years before we had software for it. He was obsessed with testing everything. Different headlines, different pictures, different arguments, and the way he did it was brilliant. He'd use keyed ads, which means each ad had a unique coupon code, so he could trace exactly which version brought in a response. No more guessing. The data, and only the data, told him what was working.
And believe me, the cost of not testing could be absolutely catastrophic. In one of his famous examples, an advertiser ran an ad that he just thought was good, based on his gut feeling. The result? It cost him a staggering $14.20 just to get a single person to reply.
But then, after applying the scientific method, testing and tweaking the approach, another ad for the exact same product started bringing in replies for just 41 cents each. Now, just stop and think about that for a second. That's not just a little bit better. That is a 35 times increase in efficiency. That, right there, is the incredible, undeniable power of testing.
So what did he learn from all this testing? Well, one of the biggest lessons, hands down, was the power of being specific. Vague, general claims like "our beer is pure" are totally worthless. Why? Because anybody can say that. But "our beer is cooled in filtered air," or "a shaving soap that softens your beard in 1 minute"? See, those are specific, they're concrete, and they feel believable. People tend to accept those claims as facts, right? So this whole scientific approach, it wasn't just about testing what to say. It was about digging deeper and understanding why people respond the way they do. And that brings us perfectly to Hopkins' third major principle, a deep dive into buyer psychology. For me, the most powerful psychological insight he had is this: stop asking people to buy from you, and instead offer them a service. He told this great story about a brush company. Their salesman would go door to door, but they wouldn't try to sell a brush.
Instead, they would say something like, "Ma'am, I was sent here to give you this brush." By offering something of value first, with absolutely no risk to the customer, they tapped into this fundamental part of human nature, reciprocity. They let the product itself do the heavy lifting. It's such a powerful shift from taking to giving.
And his book is just packed with these amazing little psychological triggers. For example, he knew how to spark curiosity. I mean, who wouldn't want to read an ad with a headline like, "Food shot from guns"? He also knew that people want real bargains, real value, not just something that's cheap. They don't want to feel like they're settling. And he taught that you should always focus on the beautiful result, not the ugly problem. Show people the health, not the sickness.
So when you put all these pieces together, right, the salesmanship, the scientific method, the buyer psychology, what you have is so much more than just an old book. You've got a truly timeless blueprint for how to communicate and persuade effectively. All right, let's just recap the Hopkins blueprint. The main takeaways. Number 1, treat every single ad like it's a salesperson. 2, test, don't guess. Always operate on data. 3, be specific. Vague platitudes are worthless. 4, understand what makes the buyer tick. And finally, number 5, trust that your product, if it's any good, is the best salesperson you'll ever have.
And that brings us to a final thought to leave you with. Think about it. When we A/B test a Facebook ad today, isn't that just Hopkins' method with fancier tools? When an influencer offers you a free guide or a free trial, isn't that just his service principle in action? It really makes you wonder, has anything fundamental actually changed in the last 100 years? Or are we all still just following his blueprint, trying to perfect that art of selling face-to-face just through a screen?